Most people think mansions are built to show wealth and success. But the biggest mansions in the world were never really about luxury. They were built to create distance from ordinary life itself. Distance from noise, crowds, strangers, and eventually even society. Because the moment people become extremely wealthy, their psychology changes. Normal life slowly stops feeling comfortable to them anymore. Most people dream about owning bigger and more beautiful homes someday. But the ultra-rich dream about controlling every environment around them. And eventually the mansion stops functioning like a normal house entirely. It starts functioning like a private world built around one person. The mansion becomes a barrier between the owner and outside reality. A carefully controlled environment where almost nothing feels unpredictable. At first, wealth wants visibility and public admiration from society. But eventually, extreme wealth begins craving silence and separation instead. And that psychological shift quietly changed luxury architecture forever. Because mansions stopped being symbols and became protection from the world. Level 1 begins with show-off mansions built for social attention online. This is the world of influencers, athletes, and newly wealthy entrepreneurs. These homes are designed to look expensive from every camera angle. Massive glass walls, neon lights, infinity pools, and exotic supercars outside. At this level, the mansion is still mostly a performance for strangers. Every room is designed to impress people rather than comfort the owner. Social media completely changed how modern luxury homes are built today. Because mansions became visual content before they became private living spaces, large kitchens rarely used for cooking become centerpiece design features. Movie theaters, giant closets, and rooftop pools dominate luxury advertisements. The mansion becomes less about living and more about appearing successful publicly. A stage where wealth performs constantly for attention and validation online. And luxury brands understand this psychology perfectly in modern culture. That's why these homes are designed to look cinematic at all times. But despite the expensive appearance, these homes often feel emotionally temporary. Because new wealth still depends heavily on public approval and recognition. Level 2 is where celebrity mansions begin changing the purpose of luxury. Fame slowly transforms homes into defensive structures against constant attention. The public made celebrities rich through obsession and endless visibility everywhere. But eventually visibility becomes emotionally exhausting for famous people. Restaurants become stressful and airports become impossible to enjoy peacefully. Every public appearance turns into surveillance by cameras and strangers. And over time, celebrity homes become larger and more hidden intentionally. Long private driveways and giant security gates begin appearing everywhere. Walls become taller while windows become darker and more reflective outside. Because privacy slowly becomes more valuable than luxury itself. For celebrities, the mansion becomes the only place they fully control emotionally. The outside world constantly demands access to their lives and attention. But inside the gates, they can finally disconnect from public performance entirely. No cameras waiting outside, no strangers recording their movements constantly. And this changes celebrity architecture in surprisingly psychological ways over time. Homes become designed to hide people rather than display them proudly. Level 3 belongs to old money estates hidden far from modern attention. This world operates completely differently from flashy celebrity mansion culture. Old money rarely needs strangers to recognize or validate its wealth publicly. Because inherited power already feels permanent and deeply established. These estates are often hidden behind forests, hills, and private countryside roads. No giant logos, no social media tours, and no attention-seeking design. The architecture feels quieter, older, and emotionally detached from modern trends. Because old money values permanence far more than temporary admiration, these homes were designed to survive generations instead of internet trends online. Some estates remain owned by the same families for centuries. At this level, luxury becomes subtle instead of loud and attention-seeking publicly. Real wealth often hides itself instead of trying to dominate visually. Old money understands visibility, creates vulnerability in powerful people over time. The harder someone is to study, the harder they become to attack. That's why the richest families are often the least visible publicly. Most people will never even know where these estates truly exist. And eventually these homes stop feeling like expensive houses entirely. They begin feeling more like private family kingdoms hidden from society. Level 4 is where mansions evolve into full-scale mega compounds completely. This is where wealth stops buying homes and starts buying environments. These properties become so large they function almost like luxury resorts privately. Entire wings exist for entertainment, wellness, and private hospitality experiences. Indoor cinemas, spas, basketball courts, wine cellars, and massive garages appear. The mansion becomes designed to eliminate the need to leave home. And this reveals something psychologically important about extreme wealth levels. The richer people become, the less they interact with public life. Private chefs replace restaurants, and home theaters replace public cinemas entirely. Everything becomes personalized, private, and disconnected from strangers outside. The mansion slowly transforms into a self-contained luxury ecosystem for owners. An environment where almost every inconvenience disappears completely. But isolation also quietly increases as these homes become larger over time, because comfort and separation usually grow together at extreme wealth levels. At this stage, many mansions begin feeling strangely empty emotionally inside. Massive rooms exist mainly because wealth demands visible scale and size. The owner may only use a tiny portion of the property daily, but the size itself becomes proof of power and status psychologically. And eventually the mansion stops feeling personal or emotionally human anymore. It starts feeling more like architecture built to symbolize dominance itself. Level 5 is where billionaires stop buying homes and start buying territory. This is the world of private compounds hidden from normal civilization. These compounds often include multiple mansions spread across giant private land. Guest houses, staff housing, helipads, and private roads appear everywhere. The property becomes so large strangers cannot even approach the owner easily. Distance itself becomes one of the primary luxury features now. At this level, neighbors disappear almost completely from daily life entirely. The owner controls not only the house, but the surrounding environment too. Entire mountains, forests, and coastlines become privately owned by individuals. Because billionaires eventually become obsessed with controlling space itself. Private security teams patrol entrances while surveillance systems monitor movement constantly. The compound begins operating more like protected infrastructure than a family home. And psychologically, this changes how owners experience ordinary reality over time. Public spaces begin feeling chaotic, loud, and emotionally exhausting instead. The owner becomes increasingly disconnected from normal social experiences completely, because their environment no longer resembles ordinary human life anymore. And once someone becomes used to complete environmental control every day, returning to normal society starts feeling psychologically uncomfortable and unpredictable. Level 6 is where mansion architecture becomes significantly darker and more defensive, because fear slowly enters the mindset of extremely wealthy people. The ultra-rich eventually stop worrying about luxury and status entirely. They begin worrying about instability, collapse, and personal security instead. And that fear quietly transformed luxury homes around the world recently. Hidden bunkers and survival systems started appearing beneath giant mansions. Underground shelters, biometric security, and reinforced panic rooms became common features. Some properties include private medical facilities and emergency command centers. Solar systems, private water supplies, and long-term food storage appear everywhere. Because billionaires increasingly prepare for global uncertainty and disruption, economic instability, pandemics, cyber attacks, and social unrest create deep paranoia privately. Extreme wealth often creates extreme fear about losing control eventually. At this level, the mansion stops protecting comfort and luxury anymore. It starts protecting survival and long-term independence from society. The property becomes designed to function during emergencies without outside assistance. A fully isolated environment capable of operating independently for months. And psychologically, this reveals something unsettling about extreme concentrations of wealth. The ultra-rich often trust society less than ordinary people do. The richer someone becomes, the more fragile the world starts appearing emotionally. Because powerful people constantly think about worst-case scenarios and collapse. And eventually the mansion stops feeling warm or emotionally welcoming inside. It begins feeling cold, controlled, and almost militarized psychologically. Level 7 is where mansions stop functioning like homes entirely for owners, and begin functioning more like private kingdoms disconnected from ordinary civilization. This is the world of royalty, oligarchs, and global power dynasties. People operating at scales most humans will never personally witness. These estates contain private staff ecosystems supporting every aspect of life daily. Chefs, security teams, assistants, drivers, doctors, and managers work continuously. The property becomes so large it resembles a small independent government structure. Entire sections exist solely for operations and infrastructure management. At this level, the owner no longer adapts to public systems anymore. Public systems begin adapting themselves around the owner instead. Private meetings replace public offices while private aviation replaces airports entirely. The mansion becomes the center of an entirely separate world. And eventually the owner stops experiencing ordinary society directly altogether. Most interactions become filtered through layers of staff and security. That level of separation changes human psychology in profound ways over time, because unlimited control slowly disconnects people from ordinary emotional reality. The mansion becomes less about comfort and more about absolute environmental dominance, a world where almost every detail exists under private control. And this may be the strangest effect of extreme wealth itself eventually. The richer people become, the smaller and more isolated their worlds grow. Most people imagine mansions as symbols of happiness and personal achievement. Large rooms, beautiful pools, and breathtaking views over giant cities. But the biggest mansions in the world rarely feel emotionally alive inside. They often feel silent, controlled, and strangely disconnected from humanity. Because eventually wealth stops trying to access society and luxury publicly, and starts trying to escape unpredictability, noise, and dependence completely. The mansion becomes a wall separating the owner from ordinary life itself. A carefully designed reality where discomfort almost never enters anymore. And maybe that's the hidden truth behind extreme luxury architecture worldwide. The mansion was never really about having more space. It was about having more control over existence itself permanently. Because power ultimately changes what people fear and what they value. At first, people chase wealth to gain freedom and public admiration. But eventually, wealth creates isolation disguised as comfort and luxury. And at the highest levels, those giant mansions become strangely symbolic places. Beautiful private worlds sitting far away from ordinary human reality. Massive silent kingdoms hidden behind gates, walls, and endless private land, built not only to display power, but to separate from society entirely.